Hey guys, it's Erik, owner of Farpoint Farms, and today we're going to be doing what is considered to be a major tune-up on this Husqvarna. Craftsman makes a similar model. It's a twin-cylinder Briggs Stratton engine, and really you need to do this every 100 hours or every other year, depending on how often you run your mower, or if yours doesn't have an hour meter, just get in the habit of doing this major tune-up every other year. This is part one. This is going to include your oil change, your spark plug replacement, fuel filter replacement, and an air filter replacement. And then you're going to go around and grease all the fittings. Phase two, which is going to be a different video, is a little more intense, and that is removing the transaxle from the vehicle and doing a drain and fill on it. And that's another video because it's kind of involved. You have to jack up the vehicle, take off the rear tires, remove a bunch of bolts and belts, take the transmission out of the mower, drain it, and refill it, put it all back together again. You have to do a purge, so on and so forth. We're going to not deal with that today. Now, some of what I'm going to do is not necessary, but I'm going to do it to make it easier for you to see what's going on. I'm going to remove the whole hood here from this tractor to make it easier to get at everything that I'm doing and to get the camera in closer. This model has some panels on the sides here that also need to be removed in order to get to the oil filter and the oil drain plug. Some models don't have that. It's just an extra step. So I'm going to go ahead and get the camera just a smidge closer. I'll show you how to pull this stuff apart and we'll get started. Alright, so the first step, we're going to remove the hood, which on most models this is going to all be very similar. The hood is just on hinges that lift up and off, but if your tractor has lights, you're going to need to unplug that one plug, and that usually sits on the side of the vehicle like this one does here. So disconnecting those, then kind of grab this. You might have to wiggle it around some, but there it goes, it comes off. We'll set that out of the way. Okay, now I've exposed the entire front of the engine. I can get to my spark plugs, my air filter, but I still need to be able to get to the oil filter drain and the oil filter itself. So I'll remove these two side panels next. Okay, so these side panels, again, some models are going to be shaped differently. Some models may not have these, but in general, to remove these, you should have a clip underneath, and then there's slots on the inside here. So I'm going to just take a regular pair of needle nose pliers and find that one clip, kind of work it until it comes out. It's just a push pin clip, right? I'll set that aside, and then this just slides up and out. See, there's little hooks there that kind of slide into position. Okay, and I'll set that aside. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but I want to show you now you've exposed your fuel filter and your oil filter. So we're right at those. We can get to those very easily as well. So I'll do the same thing to the other side. Okay, again, got that off of there, lift up, comes right off, set that aside, and now I have my oil drain plug exposed and my oil filler, which is exposed anyway. So now everything's exposed and I'm ready to start working on my engine. Again, this is a Briggs Stratton Endurance Series 24 horsepower. Pretty much any Briggs Stratton engine in any yard tractor, lawn tractor, riding mower, or garden tractor that is a twin cylinder from, I'd say, 94 probably all the way up till today is going to be almost the same job. You want to do this every other year or every 100 hours. Okay, we're going to start with the air filter, which lives underneath here. I've got my new filter right here. I bought a genuine Briggs Stratton one, but you can get aftermarket ones as well. And as you see, you just undo this little cover here, which is held on by two thumb screws. Lift that off, and there it is. It just pops off. It's held in by a soft rubber fitting there, so it just slides over this tube and that creates the seal. So not a lot to it. This was an aftermarket one. No, this is a Briggs. Huh. But it didn't have the other shield on there, but the one I'm replacing it with has the dust cover. Got my new one, and again, just going to slide it in, and it's kind of a tight fit, but that's so that dust doesn't get past the filter itself. And there it is. That wasn't so hard, now was it? Great. We're going to go ahead and reinstall our little air box cover. Again, it's just thumb screws. Get those started and work them all the way down. And that's it. That was pretty simple, right? Well, now we'll go on and replace the spark plugs. That'll be our next step. And again, very simple once we get right down to it, okay? Okay, so being that it's a twin cylinder, you're going to have a spark plug wire on each side of the engine. You're going to just pull that off with your hand, and it exposes your spark plugs right below it. Okay? I've got my 2 replacement plugs, and again, I bought real Briggs Stratton spark plugs, but there's plenty of aftermarket options. Some of them are even long life or extra performance. They shouldn't cost more than $2 or $3 a piece though. So you are going to need a tool for this job. A lot of mowers come with this tool. It's a spark plug wrench. If you don't have it, a regular automotive spark plug wrench like this one will work as well. Slide that in there, break your plug loose, and it should come right out. Okay, there it is, 100 hours on it. Get your new spark plug and go ahead and reinstall it. Give it a nice snug down there, put your wire back on, and you're ready to move on to the other side. Okay, here it is on this side. And to show the process is the same whether you use a spark plug wrench or the wrench that comes with some of your mowers, I'll go ahead and do this side with this wrench. Could probably get a better grip on this if my hands weren't so cold. I don't know if you can hear the wind outside, but I'm doing this video indoors because we got a little bit of the last gasp of winter right here in the early April. Okay, so there's your other spark plug. We'll set that one aside. Got our nice new plug here. Go ahead and insert that. And snug it down just like the other side, and then put your spark plug boot back on there. That's it. Alright, now you've replaced your air filter and both your spark plugs. We'll move back over to the other side of the engine and we'll replace the fuel filter. Now anytime I'm playing with gas or oil, I like to put on gloves. So let me pause for a moment to do that. We'll get a catch pan and put it underneath this, catch any loose fuel, and we're going to need a pair of pliers to loosen the clamps for the fuel filter, and we'll switch that out as well. Okay, so here's my fuel filter. We want to pay attention to which way the arrow is going, this way, right? And we want to make sure that when we replace it, that our new filter faces the same direction. Even though it may look like this only goes on one way, or that sometimes they change the manufacturing of these, and that even though it's shaped differently, this might be the right direction. So you just want to verify that before you take it off. So you're going to lose a little fuel when you take this off, but you have these 2 little compression clamps here. You just want to squeeze them with a pair of regular pliers and move those up a little bit. You're going to do the same thing with the other side. and move them down a little ways out of the way. Okay? And then with a little twisting, you should be able to get it loose. Okay. And then you do the same with the other side. And attach it. Great. Now you just want to reattach your clamps like so. Fairly simple, right? And that's that. If it's pulled loose from these little clips, go ahead and reattach that. Just keep those hoses out of the way. You don't want any of that stuff getting in, becoming a problem. Great. So now we'll move back to the other side and we'll drain the oil out. Now if you want to, you can warm up your engine at this point. It'll take a little time to reprime this, but your pump will eventually pump this back up and your engine will start. You can run the engine for a minute or two to warm up the oil, and then it makes it a little easier to drain on the other side. That's up to you. For right now, I think I'm just going to go ahead and let it drain. I've got plenty of time to go, so I'll just let it drain while I wait. Okay, so let's get that set up and we'll do that and we'll be almost done. Alright, so this might be a little different depending on the generation of engine you have here. Some have a tube that comes off of this, comes up and has a hook that goes right to this piece of plastic right here, a little hook. The later styles like this one, they don't. If you're the original owner and you're lucky, and when you pull this cap off, they included a hose which attaches from this and allows you to drain it into your drain bucket. Alright, and I've got a drain bucket down here. Okay? Here's the catch. If you notice, this doesn't clear the deck. If you just turn this with a bucket underneath and let it drain, oil's going to run down back here, get down onto the drive belts, and it'll ruin a $40 drive belt. You want to make sure that the oil that comes out of this ends up in that bucket and not on the frame. Now a drop may not be dangerous, but a spoonful or 2 spoonfuls even is enough to damage the belt. And once it gets oil saturated, it'll slip and you'll end up having to replace it. So if you're lucky, they included a hose. If they didn't, may I recommend finding a junk piece of tube like this one. This hose came off of my Toyota when I upgraded the transmission cooler. It just happens to be the same size. Now, I am the original owner of this tractor, but for reasons that I don't really understand, they didn't include one for me. So I'm going to hold this in place, and then you have to rotate this and pull it out. Remove your oil dipstick, and voila. Oil should start draining, and it has. And that's just going to go on for a while. You want to make sure that you get as much oil, the old oil out as you can. So I might speed this up a little bit, but we'll just let it drain. Let it do its thing. Okay, so as you can see, the oil has just about run out, just a drop here or there. I let it drain for about 5 minutes while I was doing other stuff. So now we'll go ahead and close that valve off. Move the camera up a little bit so you can see it. Just twist that and it locks into place, right? Remove your hose, put your safety cap back on, and if you have anything here, wipe it up so it doesn't get on to your belt. That would be bad. Right? Great. So now we'll go to the other side, we'll replace the filter. And then it's time to fill it back up. Start it up, let it run for a minute. We'll recheck our oil level. And then we'll move on to our last step, last 2 steps. We're going to grease the grease fittings on this, and then we'll reassemble the hood and the side panels. So see how easy this is? This $20 will save you $2,000 if you keep up with it. So now we're back over on this side, have our oil filter here. And what you notice here, it's kind of hard to tell, but this oil filter is recessed back onto the block again. So if I just unscrew this filter and put a drain bucket underneath it, I'll catch most of the oil, but again there's a risk that oil drips down, goes through these holes here, and gets down on the drive belts or on the mowing belt and ruin a very nice belt. So what you want to do is grab a piece of cardboard, or I've got this piece of plastic that I use, and I'm just going to wedge that up under there, and it actually is going to act like a funnel. My oil is going to drain down into my oil drain bucket here. Now, you can usually get these loose with your hands, but sometimes you might need an oil filter wrench or a pair of channel locks to get them loose. Either one should work fine for you. This one is already fairly loose, so I'll go ahead and unscrew that. And we'll let that oil that comes off of there. See how that's draining down now into my bucket without getting all over the deck or all over the frame. Now if we hadn't done that, you'd have lost quite a bit of oil and it would have gotten down onto the frame. That definitely wouldn't have been bad. I'm going to take my finger and just run it along here to lubricate that mating surface. Then I've got my new filter. I'm going to install it. Okay. Slide this off. Great. And just set that aside. And again, like the other side, if anything got up underneath here, you just want to clean that up with a rag before it has a chance to get down any of those holes. Right? Double check the tightness here. Oh, looks like I could use another little bit. Okay, I'm not going too crazy. It may look like I'm cranking down on this thing, but I'm not. You don't want to go too much. You definitely don't want to use a wrench to tighten it. Okay, just finger tight. So that is it. Now, on most mowers, on the hood of this, on the hood of the mower, it'll have the oil capacity on there. So usually it's 48, 64 ounces, somewhere around there. Some of the very larger engines might be a little more than that. I'm going to check that level, and then it'll be time to add oil back into the system, and then we'll fire it up, run it for a minute. It might take a little while to prime because I have an empty filter here. And once it runs for a minute, shut it back off, let it sit for a minute, and while it's sitting, I'll go ahead and grease the grease fittings on this, and we'll be done. So I've checked the level on the hood. It says 64 ounces, so I've got 2 quarts of this. It's just SAE 30 weight. You don't have to get synthetic, but you can. It's a little hard to find 30 weight synthetic, but it's out there. Okay, so I got about 1.5 quarts sitting here, but I'm going to put in 1 full quart because that's 48 ounces. And it's cold out, so it drains fairly slow. We'll let that fill in there. I'm going to add about a third of the other bottle into this. Then we'll pull it out, let it rest for a sec. We'll check the level, make sure it's close. We'll go ahead and fire it up. You don't have to put the hood back on to start this vehicle. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get it close. You can make your final adjustments here in a minute or two. Okay. All right. Clean your dipstick off. Like I said, we're just going to do a rough check here, make sure we're not way far over or way far below. Boy, bullseye. It's probably not as close as it seems, but it seems like it's right on. Right? Put the top back on. I'm double check all my stuff here, make sure it's tight, and let's fire this thing up. sit for a while, just a minute or two, and I'm going to grab my grease gun and let's grease some fittings. There's several fittings on these. There's one on each side here and here. There's usually one on the inside where the bearing for this front wheel is, and on some models there's one in the back. Okay, this one doesn't have any fittings in the back, but it does have the fittings up front. So I've got 4 places I need to grease. You should do that every 10 to 20 hours. If you don't have a grease gun, they're not very expensive. You can pick up these cheap ones here. I don't think this costs more than about $10. And a 3-pack of the cartridges for it are, again, like $7. And they'll last you pretty much maybe 10 years if this is all you're greasing with it. But you want to clean off your grease fittings with your rag, and then pump a few squirts of grease in there. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing on the inside. You can't see it here, but I'll do it on this one. On the other side, I'll show it closer. Great. Okay, I'm trying to hold the camera steady and do this all one-handed, but take a rag and clean off any grease or dirt that's accumulated around the fittings. There's your other fitting in there. Okay? And your grease gun. Hold that in there. Okay. And same thing with the bottom one. If you want to splurge and get like a $29 grease gun, they'll come with a flexible fitting, and it's a lot easier to get to some of these fittings. But okay, and that's it. So let me put the grease gun down. It's been about a minute or so. And we'll check that oil level one more time, and then it's time to reattach the hood. And there's one more little tip I want to give you, and I'll do that after we get the hood back on, so stay tuned. Alright, so just like we took it off, we've got these 2 covers we need to reassemble. They just slide on. Actually a little harder for this side because I've got the brackets for my snowplow. Around there. Slide that pin back in underneath. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I've got my pin. Let's slide this on. Great. Now I've got my plug for my lights. I'll see if I can get that to kind of dangle up here so it doesn't get caught. Alright. And then get your hood. You want to just slide that back in the hole. It's kind of wiggles into place. Just like so. Now I'm going to reconnect my headlights. Those just plug in. I want to make sure the hood closes properly. Looks like I got it on there right. Great. Now, like I said, it's been about maybe a minute, minute and a half now. Time to recheck that oil level. You want to just clean it off. Check that level. And it's about perfect. Right on the full mark. So that's what you're looking for. Okay? So let me see if I can get down here to where you can see me. The last little piece of advice I have before you're finished with your 100-hour tune-up, and this also is pretty good to do every 50, is this. If you have an hour meter, great. Some of the really high-end like John Deere models and Cub Cadet, I think, carry it. They'll actually have reminders to tell you when it's due for an oil change, due for air filters, due for spark plugs. Most of the less expensive models, not that this mower was cheap by any means, but Craftsman, lower-end John Deere's, Husqvarna, they're not going to have that. You're lucky if you get an hour meter these days. So what you need to do is keep track of it yourself. Now, I have an hour meter on mine, so I write down the hours that the last service was performed. I put it on a piece of tape, and I put it on top of the battery. A nice location where every time I pop the hood to check the oil, I can see that sticker and say, oh, I did this tune-up at 100 hours, and it's going to be due again at 150. If you don't have an hour meter, just go by date. I did it last October, and it's going to be next year that I need to do my oil change in the fall, and the following year after that I'm going to need to do my spark plugs again. That kind of setup. Your manual for your particular engine should have the hours or how often they want those things replaced. Because I use my tractor for really heavy duty work, I cut those numbers down and I do the work a little more frequently, especially oil changes. It says every 25 hours. I tend to do my oil changes every 10. It's a few extra bucks a year, but if it saves this engine, it's totally worth it. So that's it. I am Eric, owner of Farpoint Farms. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of doing your 100-hour tune-up on your Craftsman or Husqvarna tractor. And if you did enjoy part 1 and you feel brave, and you have a hydrostatic transmission, whether it's a K46 or a K66 or a K57, stay tuned, because in a week or two I'll be doing part 2, which is a little more in depth. You're going to need some more tools. But we're going to take the rear end out of this thing, you're going to drain the fluid out of the transaxle, clean the filter, put fresh fluid in it, and reinstall it. And that is also something that is actually called for every 100 hours. K46 transmission is a sealed transmission, supposed to never need work. If you believe that, you're going to need a new transmission soon. Really, on a K46, every 50 hours you should be draining that fluid out, cleaning off the magnetic filter or the magnetic plugs that are in there, putting in fresh 5W50 synthetic oil, and you're good to go for a while, okay? So I will see you all next time. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe. And also in the comments section, if you would, if there's anything else you'd like to see how to do or would like to learn how to do, let me know. Take care.